Hey golfers, and welcome back to the Second Swing YouTube channel. And today we've got another fun live at lunch today. Of course, at noon every Tuesday, we go live here on the YouTube channel, do some club testing, get some fitter insights, and more. And today we got a fun one. We have Master Fitter Tyler Fitzel with us here at the Minnetonka Tour Van. And we're going to do, I think this is probably a dilemma you face in a lot of fittings, Tyler, right? We're talking about the long game clubs between basically your longest iron and then your 3-wood.
Yep.
What do you do in between there? And so today we've got a 7-wood, we've got a utility iron, the Ping I crossover, we've got a G430 4 hybrid as well, and then we've got an I230 4 iron. And so a combination of Ping clubs, very different, all at about 22 degrees aloft. So we're going to kind of have some fun with this test here to see what those differences are. What have you seen in the popularity, I guess, of these 7-woods especially?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to note, the first thing is, as our swing starts to get slower, the ball flies lower. So what we need to look for in that is we need to look for some more launch. We always talk about how launch and spin are key factors. We talk about getting the ball in the air, more carry distance means more total distance as well. What we look for is to try to find out what that longest iron is. So we've talked about irons before, we've talked about game improvement, we've talked about player distance, we've talked about some players' irons, talked about wedges. One of the most common parts of the fitting as we start talking about the bag and the tools that we're using is you get into that longest. What's the longest iron I want? And that's success, that I'm going to be successful in. We want to gap that so the gapping is appropriate. Mm-hmm. We might go into, like you mentioned, some sort of a utility iron. It might be a hybrid. It might be a 7-wood. 7-woods have really taken on a lot of popularity. There are some differences with them that we have to be careful of, and that goes into, we'll talk about this with you and your swing speed. You have a little bit faster swing speed, and some things that happen with the 7-wood based on the technology behind that too. Yeah,
there's certainly, I mean, even I've hit 7-woods before. I have currently play a 4-iron and a 3 utility iron in my bag, because you're right, I have the swing speed to generate a little bit more height and spin and things, but that's kind of where this conversation and the popularity of these 7-woods has come, is the players maybe don't swing as fast or struggle at the top of the bag getting the ball into the air. The 7-woods, 9-woods even, and then also even high lofted hybrids, 5 hybrids are becoming really more popular because players there's an extra help there to get the ball in the air. So we'll see that in the testing today. Is those bigger metals, I guess, at this part of the bag are going to get the ball way higher in the air than an iron would.
Yep.
So golfers, if you're in the chat, make sure you engage, subscribe to the channel so you can participate in the chat. We already got a couple comments already. Shout out to Mike for bringing the beer in the chat. So we'll start doing some testing today. If you guys have any questions or comments or thoughts about this particular test, make sure you leave those here and we'll get to them here with Tyler as well. But otherwise, I'm ready to start hitting some shots here.
Yeah. Let's start with the 4-iron.
Okay.
If we're going to go with an I230.
Yep.
It's got an extra stiff shaft, a C-taper light, so it's a little bit lighter, but definitely very, very stiff in the profile to that.
Yeah.
Let's hit about 5-6 shots, just kind of get an idea about what we're seeing up there. And then we'll kind of scroll through the different models we've got. So maybe go iron, utility iron, hybrid, fairway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's because I think there's also probably what might happen too here is we're probably going to see differences in distance too. Now these are all lofted about the same today.
Correct.
But because of the build of the club and the forgiveness in there and how high the ball launches and spins, the distance also might not be the same. It probably will be quite different in some cases. So that part I'm also curious to see, and also I think it'll be enlightening as well for people.
Yep.
Oh, I gotta get that RCT ball.
That would help.
Yeah, I mean, that could work, but
One of the things that we talk about is the replacement, right? So if you've been golfing for quite a while and you've been doing it with longer irons in the bag, you may have 3 irons, 4 irons, maybe even 5 irons. There becomes a point where we start talking about, okay, what am I going to replace that with? Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily want to replace that just with the same sort of an iron in a different model, because what ends up happening is the loft can change, the shaft can change, the carry distance, the launch angles. So what we're really looking for to start off here is what sort of ball speed, launch, and spin do we get out of these? Mm-hmm. And then what sort of peak height, landing angle, and carry we get.
All right, that first one I kind of hit fat. I don't know if we're going to keep that in the set or not. That one was hit solid, just the face a little bit open.
It's fine. We see a lot of, we talk a lot about the elite level game, if you will. We talk a lot about professionals. We're kind of intrigued. Well, what have they got in the bag? What do they hit? It's interesting to note that as we talked about irons, Kevin Kraft was here last week. We were talking about kind of the combo set, the blended set, the progressive set. And at least what we know from like Titleist as an example, they say at least 80% of all their tour players have a blended set of some sort. In other words, by the time they get to the 4-iron or the 3-iron,
it's probably something different.
Yeah, that's right. It's not necessarily the same model as the rest of their irons. And what that does is help present maybe a different ball speed, might present a different launch window. Talking about the window that it gets into, talk about the carry distance that it has, or it could be something like spin. That's one of the things that we try to look for in a fitting in general. It's like, you've got so many tools that you can have in the bag. I say double coverage is where two clubs basically do the same thing.
Right.
And what we're going to find is these clubs will do similar things, but they're not going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the conversation
and that's,
piece for us.
You always want a purpose for every club, and if it ends up being they can go the same distance as long as they have a different ball flight or purpose to them, right?
Yeah.
So, like actually, I'm looking at the chat here and I see David actually said he has 3 wood, 7 wood, and 3 hybrid in the bag. Yeah. So because I would imagine those have maybe the 7 wood and 3 hybrid might have similar distances depending on what his lofts are with those, but they're probably pretty different trajectories, I would imagine.
Yeah, and you could have a 2, a 3, and a 4 wood, but if they serve a purpose in your bag,
right? Yeah, I mean that's gonna be different for everybody.
It's no different than if we were to talk about wedges on the bottom side of the bag versus the top side of the bag. We want versatility. We also want spacing and gapping. I'd say that's the one thing we try to do in all of our fittings with our fitters at Second Swing. We really try to gap things out, right? We try to hit clubs and find appropriate gappings that allow us to perform better. And really, there's kind of 2 sides to the story. Where you talk about wedges, most irons, as a general rule, they're a 1/2 inch longer than one another. The lofting is pretty consistent. It's about 3 or 4 degrees between iron. So we're normally hitting a more full type swing with it.
Yeah.
You get into wedges, and we've said this before, you can go from 5 feet to 50 yards, and it's the same club. It's different technique.
Right.
The same thing ends up being true on the other end of the bag. When you start going from an iron to maybe a utility or a hybrid or a fairway wood, we start seeing length of club differences.
Yes,
we start seeing trajectory different. We start seeing ball speed differences. Even though like all of these are basically 22 degrees, all the clubs we're going to try today are 22 degrees.
Yep.
You're still going to see vast differences in the numbers.
And we should note too, we had a question in the chat. Someone's asking about the length of the clubs. I have them at basically standard as what you would play, I guess, for each club because, like 7 woods are going to be longer than 4 irons. That's just kind of how they're designed. And we're going to try to produce the same, we match the lofts up. We also want the clubs to perform as they're supposed to, I guess. So, I had an issue here going out to the right here, Tyler, didn't I? With the,
a little
with the
bit,
4
but
iron
that's
here.
okay.
But
We'll adjust here.
I hit them pretty good for the most part. So, but I'm curious now because I would imagine this will be probably the lowest ball flight I'll have today. I would imagine, on average, because typically irons center of gravity is a little bit higher. Because that pushes the ball down a little bit more at impact.
Good.
But even still, I hit that 110 feet in the air.
So as a collective, right, let's hit, this is actually, I really like that. The peak height's 110 feet in the air. Landing angle's 45 with a 4 iron. That's got some stopping power. You see carry 226 going about 227 going about 240. That'd be a useful tool.
Yeah, and I think that is why I have a 4 iron in my bag, is because I do have the speed and the capability to hit it high enough to stop it on the green if I need to. I know that's where this whole conversation begins in a fitting, I imagine, is what part of the bag, or do you feel like if you hit it, with that flat trajectory, does it not stay on the green for you? And so for me, I have the speed where that can happen. Obviously, a lot of people, that's where this part of the bag really isn't a 4-iron. It's probably one of these other options.
Yeah. I used to carry a 3-iron. Used to carry a 4-iron. Personally, now I carry a 5-iron as the longest iron. They're still there's enough loft on them that the 5-iron does its job, and I can even maybe knock it down a degree and get a little bit more out of it. But you have to look at it in terms of, like, I don't know how many times I'd look at the stats and say, well, the 4-iron it's not doing anything different than my 5. It just goes lower. There's not like a need in my bag for that. I need height. Right. I want to get that ball up. So that's where I usually, for me personally, I go from 5-iron to a hybrid.
Yeah, and I imagine that's pretty common too.
Yeah, and swing speed's not a determining factor to this. A lot more of it has to do with ball speed, launch, and spin.
Yeah.
So if you have ball speed, that has a chance to, initial ball velocity has a chance to climb.
Yep.
And launch. It's when that ball velocity comes off maybe a little bit lower, that's where the launch comes down a little, or the spin might come down a little. And that's where you run into trouble because it's not in the air long enough.
Yeah, right. And
that's
where
crossover.
Yeah, so that's where then you start moving into a club like this.
Yeah.
Which I actually have an I crossover 3-iron in my bag. So I go from 4-iron to then this in a 3-iron.
Okay.
Which I have come to like quite a bit.
Because of it, I don't really have a utility option. I'll just leave it as the crossover.
Yeah,
so
that's fine. Oh, hit that one a little thin. And I will say too, the crossover for me is way more of an off the tee club where I like to actually keep it a little lower.
Yeah.
And so, and I like that about this club. Like if I need a 250-yard tee shot, don't need it to mess with the wind a lot or anything. Just want to keep it relatively low. I typically will hit my crossover club. So that's the purpose it has for me anyway. Ooh. A tiny bit fat, but it might go really high because I hit it high on the face. Yep. Not that high though. All right. That was hit hard. Yep. That was a good swing.
Really solid too.
Yeah. All right, this is starting to go a little higher. As I hit, it's more solid. Yeah. I think I got one more.
Yeah, one more. Okay.
Interesting how
Good.
close those spin rates are.
All right. First, 4 things we talk about the ball. Ball speed, launch, spin, and direction. Things are a little bit off to the right. I'm not necessarily worried about that. You have a little inside-out path.
Yep.
And as long as they're all doing virtually the same thing.
It's an easy fix, yeah.
Yeah, it's not something I worry about. And this holds true in a fitting too, right? Sometimes we come in and go, well, that's off to the right. It's not necessarily that I'm worried about the right. It's not that we get in here and we have this tight dispersion with ultimate control.
Yeah.
It's more about finding out what this does, giving us a repeatable pattern. So as an example, if we break it down by the dispersion, the plus-minus difference, plus minus 6.3 in terms of carry, 234, 33.
Yeah. And that first one I hit fat is the big difference there.
Yeah, outside of one shot, these all basically flew about 234 yards every single time. That's same thing on the total distance, 252, 251, and there's a couple that maybe aren't. But I'm looking more for the consistency.
Yeah.
So that's there. Ball speeds up with the crossover. We would expect it. It's got a more lively face. It's a thinner
hollow
face.
body.
It's got a deeper channel. It has more weight down. Launch-wise, one of the things that Ping's done specifically with this, and a lot of these manufacturers, what you see a lot of these in TaylorMade, we see them in Titleist, we see them in Mizuno, Callaway. Every company is making very similar sort of, call it utility iron.
Driving iron.
Sometimes we call it driving iron.
Yeah.
The premise of this is to be higher launching than the iron that it might be.
Right.
It's like, I don't need a 3 iron. I want a 3 utility.
Yep.
They're going to get it to launch higher. They're going to get weight down. They're going to get weight back.
Plus a little bit more forgiveness. You know, got some.
Yeah.
Some of them have really some extra weighting in the heel and toe to stabilize it. So it's like it's kind of like a beefed up version of what iron you would have here. So you know, if you have obviously in this case it's I-230, but even if we were to go G430, this is even still in a lot of ways a little bit bigger than the G430, and so it would be a little bit more forgiving, a little bit hotter off the face. But I think still that my favorite thing about it too is it still can launch low if you need it to, personally. But I know for the sake of this, that's not really as important. But
so what's kind of cool? First, you got almost 10 feet higher average. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Which it should. We'd like to see this climb higher. It's slightly steeper on the landing angle, but by maybe a degree and a half. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not game changing in that. It is carrying a little bit farther, and it's going slightly farther. I attribute those just more to the ball speed factor.
Right. Yeah. 'Cause everything else is pretty close.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Really, just a little bit more speed off of this face is kind of the difference. And we should also note too that, I mean, again, as we talked about the length, we're playing the lengths to these as they standard, would be typically fit, right? Or as they would typically be built. So probably a little bit longer shaft as well, attributing to maybe some slightly more clubhead speed, but even still, 4 miles an hour is not a joke. So.
Well, and even the actual length to that, you'll have to give me that, and I can measure that up. The iron's at 38
I think
and a half.
it feels slightly longer, so I'm sure it is. But
it should be. Usually right around 30. Yeah, it's almost 40, so it's 39 and a quarter. So it's just a little over an inch longer. Let's do that one real quick too.
Here's the hybrid.
Yeah.
That may be. Is that even shorter?
That's at 39 and a half.
Okay.
Do you have the right shaft in there?
Yeah.
The 4 hybrid shaft?
4 hybrid shaft.
Okay, all right.
So. Got some viewers throwing in their setups in the chat right now. We got some interesting ones.
Good.
Brandon says he's excited about the utility irons. I wonder, if Brandon saw what he wanted to out of that, or if that maybe, he just said he was just curious about it. So we also got kind of David throwing the clubs in there. James, our fitter, is also talking about his set. He's got a driver, a 2 out of 2 utility iron, 4 hybrid, 5 utility iron, and then 6 through pitch. So that's kind of using almost everything we got here.
Yeah.
Got 2 different utility irons with a hybrid in between,
right.
Which is interesting.
I think part of that conversation we had weeks ago when we talked about what's in the bag for Bryson DeChambeau.
Yes.
And, we look at that. He's got some tools. They're unique, but they're also they're unique for a reason.
Yes.
Because they fit what he wants to do with the clubs.
Yep.
And that's all that really matters. And this isn't about having something unique. You just want to have something that is useful, provides the best opportunity to perform well.
Yeah. Again, it's supposed to be catered to how you play.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal here. So that's the fun thing about everybody throwing their setups in the chat right now is there's not a wrong answer.
No.
You could have 0 hybrids or fairwoods at all. You could have maybe go driver to your maybe you have a 1 iron. You have that much speed where a 1 iron is the next club that you want. And there are options out there for that.
I don't know who makes a 1 iron.
So there used to be the Titleist U505. used to be a 1 iron option.
Oh yeah,
like 16 or 17
I meant
degrees.
like a real 1 iron.
Oh no,
like a Hogan 1 iron.
Yeah, classic
Okay.
1 irons.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those aren't made anymore.
I don't. We'll see if Larry Bobka wants to make one.
He probably could. Yeah,
He could.
That'd be the go-to spot.
Be interesting.
All right, so the G430 hybrid here. This is
Yeah.
at 22 degrees standard, right?
Yep.
The 4 hybrid's 22 degrees. We just hit the I-230 at 20. I think that's slightly over 22. And
Yeah.
that's 22 as well. The
Correct.
I crossover 4 iron. So Now this is at 22. Let's see what happens here. Right away, a little bit more ball speed there than I think I've seen yet. Interesting. A little lower, too. 250 carry.
Yeah, that's okay.
It was a slight toe strike, so maybe that spin went down because of that.
That's okay.
This is another good one. Yep. Ooh, a little bit thin. So it's launching a little lower.
Yep. It's all right.
Interesting here. More speed again. Yeah. Is there a reason that this one's straightening out a little bit more, or is that kind of a coincidence in how I'm hitting the ball right now? I'm curious because I haven't had that sort. I mean, I think one maybe that went out to the right a little bit there, but the other ones are obviously straighter. So I don't know. Uh-oh. Speaking of the right miss, there it is. That might go out of bounds.
Yeah, one of the reviewers had said that too. You hit the cart path a few times out there. And if you look at it, yep, you did. You get the cart path out there.
Yeah.
That's in the parking lot, but that's all right. Hit one more.
I'll hit one more. Yeah, the viewers can forget that happened. See, when we film videos that aren't live, those are maybe one of the shots where we go, that's not really, that's kind of an outlier. We take it out. But
Well, even live, we would talk about it in a fitting. And
Yeah,
we
right.
get to a point where we have something like that. Well,
ooh, that
if the
one was a little
numbers
healy.
are where we want numbers, the numbers are important for us. But if they're not, that's okay. We realize that there are going to be some outliers, and that's what's
Yeah.
going to happen. Let's take a look at a couple things here.
Yeah, that last one was healy too, but we're gonna keep it
It
in
was, and let's leave them up there.
Yeah, no,
much
that's
like
fine,
we-
dude.
Yeah, much like we were talking about with, it's really interesting. So the ball speed obviously is higher.
there. Yeah,
Okay,
that's,
we would expect that. The launch is a little bit lower. The
which
spin's
is
about the same. The height's about the same. The landing angle's the same. With that ball speed, now we see a lot more in terms of carry.
yeah.
So remember, there's four things about it: ball speed, launch, spin, and direction. Let's leave the direction out for a second, because just looking at the ball speed and the launch and the spin, we can still, it still has a picture to tell us.
Right.
This is the one I want you to look at: club speed.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the things that we tend to also look at in trying to define why did something do something. I'll get to the idea of why that hybrid may have been a little bit straighter, but in this world, you're swinging the club at almost the same speed.
Yeah.
So now we start talking about the technology in terms of the ball speed.
Right.
The launch really didn't change that much. The spin didn't change that much. The height didn't change. The landing angle. This is just a little bit more about ball speed.
Yeah.
And every 1 mile an hour is about 2.7 yards. So as we start taking a look at where the ball speed gets us, it gets us distance. That's a huge part to
Yeah.
that. The other thing for that too, you mentioned why might the hybrid be going a little bit straighter? Well, the lie angle is a little bit more upright.
Okay. Oh, I suppose it is, isn't it? On a,
Yeah.
On a hybrid, I didn't think of that.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about as we get into the 7-wood as well. Where the 7-wood, because it also has an even more upright lie angle.
Yep.
One of the things that we run into with people that have more speed is they rotate that club
They go hard left.
and they can get
Well, for
that.
righties, yeah.
Yeah, they can get that club to turn over.
Yeah.
It's a design feature. where
that's fascinating.
stronger players tend to need to have it a little flatter. So the lie angle, and a lot of the companies they're adjustable.
Right.
That way in hybrids and in fairways.
Yeah, which on this case, now it's funny because I was probably needing it a little bit upright, at least for today, and based on the first 2 clubs, and then the hybrid straightening itself out. Also worth noting that my dispersion is a little bit wider with the hybrid.
Yeah.
But I think that's, I had a couple not so good swings there. Really, my 3 best swings of the day are also with the hybrid. So if we're talking about accuracy and distance. They're both way up there, over 260 total. So, yeah.
Let's try the 7.
So what do we think is going to happen with the 7 wood here?
The 7 wood.
We think it's going to go higher.
Predicting is always difficult.
So this is actually a Ventus 8X. So
that's something we had sitting here.
yes.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, this was one I just found out there. So if anybody needs a G430 7 wood with a Ventus 8X.
Yeah. Black 8X.
Black 8X.
Yeah.
Yes. We got it at the Second Swing Minnetonka. It's a pretty good find here.
That's a club, man.
This is a golf club.
That's
yes.
a golf club.
Yes. So I haven't really ever played like a high lofted fairway, really in my life. I've been I've played a hybrid a little bit, but recently now this eye crossover I have with my 3-iron is what I play. So
yeah.
To me, looking down at this, it's a little bit strange, but obviously I've seen and watched fittings and seen testimonials about how much these things can help. So.
Well, let's see what she's got.
That's hammered. I don't know how far left it's going to go, but okay. Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. Right away, 146 feet in the air.
Yeah. Landing angle 52.
Look how much faster I swung it too.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was doing that, but. All right, that was my don't hit it left swing, and I still no, that's looking good.
Yeah, but peak height, 149 feet.
Yeah, that's high.
It is.
Wow. That's a good looking golf shot, though. If it's a calm day.
Yeah.
Ooh. All right, that one's a little heely. Low face, yeah. Okay. Interesting. It still went 117 feet in the air.
Yep. Stopped, just basically stopped in a dime.
Yeah, within 9 yards. Interesting.
Yeah.
I did notice too, I wanted to bring this up.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a couple people in the chat. They put in, I mentioned everybody putting their setups in there.
Yeah.
I got a couple people using a mini driver, which is fascinating. The popularity of those, we did that burner copper video. So that's where this, probably not at 22 degrees, you wouldn't throw a mini driver into this particular thing, but it's something to think about if you're going to go driver, mini driver.
Yeah.
And then do you maybe not have a 3 wood and maybe go to, say, 5 wood? If you're going to go loft, maybe it's a 8 degree driver, 13.5 degree mini driver, and then maybe it's an 18 or 19 5 wood.
Yeah, the mini driver in general, kind of the lower lofted fairway wood, is gaining popularity. A few years ago, TaylorMade came out with the mini. Callaway's done it for a long time. TaylorMade did it for quite a while. A couple years ago with the TSR, we saw the TSR 2 Plus, which was a larger head size in that fairway model, a little bit lower lofted. We saw that there were some other ones that were made for tour only type. Can't talk about the GT yet, but there will be an option similar to what was an option.
Yeah.
And it makes sense once you hear about why Titleist in the new GT fairways have done what they've did on the one. They didn't have anything for us in terms of mini driver. That's conversation
but
piece that a lot of people want to know about.
But I think there's an increasing need for maybe it's not a mini driver actually,
Yeah.
but a wood that is stronger than 14, 15 degrees.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are looking for something off the tee they can use that they can still chase out there a little bit further.
Yes.
I know that's what Kevin has told us about his game. Like he actually has driver yips where he gets up on the tee, and he's got a one-way miss with his driver. And if there's trouble on the other side, he's got to hit that mini driver. And so I think there's a growing number of golfers that are interested in something that serves that purpose.
Well, and look at it for this, right? Stronger players, we've seen this out of a lot of stronger players, tour players as well. They'll put that in, but they'll do it as a tee option because, number one, the driver might go too far on a particular hole, and the 3-wood isn't necessarily, I don't necessarily need a 3-wood. That's going to do just the same thing. That we want, we want something different. We want a separation. So it fits well. I think about, I have a 3-wood TSR2. You can look at my What's in the Bag. That was on last week. I really like the 3-wood because I usually hit it very straight. Usually gets a lot more hang time. I'm not short with it at all. It really serves a good purpose. But I've played, now this is a 15 degree, and I just have it at 15, but I've played 13 and a halves, 14 and a halves. I've played some of the lower loft stuff because I felt like I generated too much height and spin. The reality is I created height by kind of moving up through the ball, but I didn't create any spin.
So it was kind of knuckling through the air.
Yeah, there's climbing spin and diving spin, so it would get up and dive out of the air.
What would you call this spin here? Climbing spin?
No, that's climbing spin. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I got one more swing here, but that one, it really, I don't know if you can look at the impact location on this one. If you can maybe, I don't know if TrackMan picked up on that one. No, it didn't.
Not on that one.
It felt like it was a good swing, so and it felt like good contact. I was really surprised to see that as a result. I didn't feel like it had like that much spin on it, but
right.
I think we're maybe seeing why I don't play a 7-wood. Well, that's just a miss entirely, but
okay.
That one might go 200 feet in the air.
Well, and even for that, like, it's still doing the same sort of thing. Well, let's go back to the numbers, right? We've seen ball speed up. We've seen launch. Now that's our highest launch. That's our highest spin.
The spin's not even close.
No, it's like almost 1,000 more RPMs. We've also seen the peak height climbing almost 20-some feet.
Yeah.
35 feet from where you were even just in an iron. Let's take this off for a quick second. Landing angle, obviously, it's our steepest. And now carry distance, we're looking at that saying, well, you've got a crossover. You got a crossover doing that.
Right. So that's where that conversation comes into play.
You also kind of have a 4-iron doing that.
Yeah, I kind of do.
And that's not to say that's a club that we don't need in the bag, but this is I would say this is common when I start seeing strong swings want to get into a 7-wood because they'd like some more height.
Yeah.
The problem is the lie angle on a 7-wood is much more upright.
Which you can see.
And it's just like in irons, if it gets too upright, that face might close, you might start catching it low on the face or maybe on the toe, maybe in the heel. You're not making as crisp or clean a contact as we probably could with that. So it's interesting because it's not a bad tool for you, but clearly the hybrid was a much, much more useful tool after that 4-iron.
Right.
And this is you, right? Mm-hmm. We would look at the same sort of thing if we're talking about a customer in here saying, what am I going to do at that area?
Yeah.
We would try to find something that blends this. This also is where we talk about double coverage, as I've mentioned, where you have two clubs that are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I do get the question a lot, hey, you know what, I've always played a driver, a 3-wood, and a 5-wood. Well, there's too many options now to say that a driver, a 3-wood, and a 5-wood is what you need.
Right.
Go back to that conversation about the mini burner or the mini drivers in general.
And all these people in the chat that have not that exact setup. It's not driver 3-wood, 5-wood. They got all kinds of different things in there because of what you're saying.
So let's go to the other side of this, and let's just say, for an instance, we've got a lot slower swing speed.
Right.
And we're doing the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Your results have distance to them because of club speed and ball speed?
Yep.
The same thing happens with slower club speeds and ball speeds. This exact sort of thing. Not as much launch, usually, not as much spin,
Right.
usually, but the distances are going to back off for us. And that's going to become one of the issues that we talk about.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's like, well, I want to carry a 4-iron. You know, I hear it all the time. I've always played a 4-iron. You also used to play a 2-iron, and that's not in the bag anymore. Or used to play a 3-iron. Well, that's not in there either. And in the way that some of the clubs get lofted, we try to do here is we just try to make sure that these are all as identical as possible in the lofting to prove this point between what we see out of it. Irons go lower, hybrids and utilities get a little bit higher,
Yeah.
and fairways get even higher.
Right.
And so when you're talking about, basically we talk about the replacement. So what do I do if I don't have a 4-iron? That depends.
Yeah.
It might be a 5 hybrid by one company.
Yeah.
It could be a 4 hybrid by another. It could be a 3 hybrid by a different company.
Yeah.
And I say that because, take for instance, Callaway and Titleist can independently change its loft and its lie angle. Ping can actually open and close in terms of hybrids. We're talking about hybrids for a second.
Yeah.
We have the same thing happening in TaylorMade with one of their hybrids, in Mizuno and their hybrids. So we talk about everyone has adjustability in terms of changing the lie angle and the loft of that club.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, it might be in Titleist. Let's say I grab a 21 degree
Yeah.
and I turn it down to 20. That's different than the 23 degrees I can make it.
Right.
It's very different.
Yeah.
20 versus 23 is very different.
Adjustability offers you even more options.
It does.
One thing I wanted to point out too, I saw this morning on, I think it was the DP World Tour Instagram. So if you guys, follow or want to look that up, it should be on there. But Ricky Fowler, they did a quick little video on him because he's playing 2 4-irons for his golf over there.
Yep.
So he's playing, I think it looked like a King Tour 4-iron.
Yep, that's a normal,
Which is
part of the
I think he said it was 23 degrees aloft.
Yep.
And then he's playing a dark speed 4-iron,
Yeah.
which is down to like 19. And
Yeah.
so I think it was just him explaining,
Yeah.
the difference. And it's, there's a 4 on both clubs, but they're going to do completely different things
Correct.
for him. Because, so you might have that scenario where someone maybe is
yeah.
playing, a 4-iron that has 23, 24 degrees aloft, but they
Yep.
need another club. It could be what Ricky Fowler did, another 4-iron.
And that's where we talk about progression in the set.
Yeah.
So if you have a set that moves from more like a blade into a cavity back into something that's maybe even a little deeper and stronger to that. We talk about the lofting. A lot of the companies in their irons have had to do that. They've had to adjust the lofting to gap appropriately.
Right.
Right? They're actually doing something about that, or they're moving the weight to a specific area that way too. Ricky did that. He won the Phoenix Open.
Several years ago.
Yeah, a few
4 or
years
5
ago.
years ago, yeah.
And
But I know he's been in the past. He has done that before.
Yeah.
Maybe not dark speed, but in the past has used a game improvement long iron
Yes.
as kind of that bridge the gap in his bag.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
and that's a
uncommon.
great example, right? So even if you were to talk about Cobra has a 1 length option.
Yes.
And they do it in their hybrids as well. So you could go from something that's, let's say it's 21 degrees, from a game improvement 21 to a more of a player's blade in 21. You can get a hybrid that's at 21.
Yeah.
You can get a 1 length that's at 21. Like they all are at 21, but you start looking at their performance aspect. Because one of the things I would say about the 1 length irons is, or hybrids for that matter, because they do make some hybrids that are 1
Yeah.
length. They're very consistent because you can kind of stay where you are in your
Right,
swing.
you're making the same golf swing.
But again, I look at that actually for the lie angle. I don't have adjustability in those particular models, but that's something that I look at. Lie angle is very important.
Yeah, for sure. So as we start to wrap up here, we'll have anybody watching jump in with any final questions or thoughts you might have in the chat. But I think to kind of give a sort of a final breakdown or maybe draw some conclusions here, I think we're kind of seeing why, for at least most golfers, these 7 woods and even 9 woods are becoming so
Yep.
popular. Is because, I mean, at least in this test, the difference in the launch and the spin of a 7 wood versus really any of the other options that are probably more popular for, I guess, the masses, or
Yeah.
at least have been in the past. I mean, so much more spin, so much more height, the landing angle's way steeper. So I think that's why you're seeing, well, at least in the fitters I've talked to here are loving throwing the 7 woods, 9 woods in the bag, is because it's so much easier for golfers to get the ball up off the ground.
Yeah. And the other thing too is if you look from company to company, there are particular models. So we'll use Titleist as a quick example. They have a TSR 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the driver, but they have a 1, 2, 3 in all the rest of their stuff.
Yeah.
They have the TSR 1 is designed as a slightly larger chassis to get the weight further back to create more launch. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden it's for slow swings. It's designed to create more launch. So you can get yourself into a 21 degree in the TSR 1, 2, or 3, and they're going to perform differently because of the size, what you can do with the adjustments.
Yeah.
That's the same in Callaway. They have a couple of different models. They have like the AI Smoke, and then they have a Smoke Max. They've also got they got the UW, which is their version of taking a fairway wood and they call it a utility wood, a hybrid and a fairway wood.
Yeah.
Kind of blend those two together. Very popular.
Yeah.
Very popular and
it's an
very
explosive golf
useful.
club.
If you're kind of stuck in between, it becomes very useful. Yeah.
And then, I mean, because you made that note about TSR 1, Nelly Corda was playing, which she was with Titleist, was playing TSI 1 or TSR 1. And then now with TaylorMade, she's playing the QI10 Max, which is, you think about that as the, like for high handicappers, I say that in quotes because I know we don't like to put golfers into these boxes of handicap for these types of things. But, it's the Max. It's the most forgiving driver of the line. And so you think, wow, why would the best, golfer, one of the best golfers in the world want QI10 Max? Well, I think it's just because she gets the launch and spin that she wants when she hits it well. And so that's...
The other thing to throw in there too is we haven't talked really at all about shafts.
Yeah.
And I think shafts are very important. Where you go with it, right? It's not an iron. So if you got a hybrid in there, you're not going to put an iron shaft in.
Right.
Although I do. Personally, I do. I have steel shaft, iron shafts in my hybrids. But I do it because I want the consistency and the control.
Yeah.
And it does. It provides, it's like, as soon as I get graphite, no matter how heavy I make the graphite or how stiff it is, the shot dispersion is just all over.
And that brings another element entirely into this test that we obviously don't have the time to, but at some point we can maybe even try is, trying a test like this, but then crossing over the shafts into each club. We could get really interesting with it to see how that performance changes. But we kind of, today was just standard lengths, extra stiff shafts really that we could kind of find in everything, and then try to get the lofts to match up, and then obviously that's a big difference up there, at least with the 7 wood. And then
and I think it's worth noting every company has several shafts as they call stock. It's shafts that they've tested, engineers have put together that they find as a really good fit for their equipment. I'd say there's at least 4, maybe 6 for every fairway wood hybrid style. Utility irons, there's a lot of variants that can go into that too. So when we start talking about stock, it's not like this is a Ventus 8X.
Well, this would not be
It's something that you can get in this. This is just something that actually fits you really, really well. But we go back into this, and we're talking about the 85X, which is probably up around 90-ish grams. So pretty close to what something like that is. The same thing here. We've got an 80 gram in the utility wood. This we've got a 115, partly because it was a good fit for what you do, but you'd probably swing something a little heavier than that.
A little bit heavier. I got 100, but.
And that actually could be one of the reasons why, as you mentioned, it's like.
Because I went out that way?
Yeah, so we start talking about the weight of the shaft, and we also talk about how shafts can influence the dispersion, but they do it in terms of consistency for deflection. And you might find that there's a certain shaft that turns over for you.
Yeah, right.
That
and that's
works
the whole
better.
extra part of these fittings.
Exactly.
That, so we're trying to go through this long game session. You're working with Tyler or whoever it might be. They'll find 1 or maybe 2 of these clubs that's going to be the gap, but then it becomes, all right, which shaft you're going to use, how you dial that in, make sure the gapping and the flight is different, that type of thing. So
well, if I'm doing my job, if any of our fitters are doing their job, it's going to be hard for the customer because they have to make a decision between 2 good options.
Yeah, right.
When
Give
we
them
come
the
up, when we
which
come
one
up
they
with
like
2,
better?
which
one they like the look and feel
Right.
of? Yeah. I like this comment from Preston. We'll kind of wrap it up with this.
Yeah.
Said he was playing driver, 3 wood, 5 wood, 4 iron, and replaced the 5 wood with a G430 3 hybrid from us. Had never used a hybrid. After 3 rounds, it's already his go-to. 240 yards every time with that mid-flight that he's looking for. That's the whole purpose of
I would
getting
say
the numbers into a gapping session like this.
I love that comment because he brings up exactly what we talk about. People will come in as customers, they'll come in for this fitting and say, okay, well, we're looking for something in the top end of that bag. I've never hit a hybrid.
Yeah.
Okay, how long have you been playing? Some people, as they look at it, work extremely well with irons. And we may not go to hybrids. In this case, it was awesome. He got to hit that. It worked out.
Yeah.
Best case scenario. On the other side of it, someone might come in and really need that hybrid, and it's just not a good fit.
Right.
Something about that isn't clicking. That doesn't mean it's a bad option. It just might not be the best option for you.
Right. Yeah.
And that, I think that's important because we're not going to peg you in and go, all right, well, you need this club because someone says this is the perfect launch ideal and this is the perfect spin. Now we want to find something that works well for you. Like for instance, I have steel shaft, very lightweight stiff steel shafts in my hybrids.
Yeah.
So what?
No, it works for you. Yeah, it's what you like to feel and everything. That's the whole point of this, is to make sure
they
you
work
get something
really,
that works
really,
for.
really well.
Yeah.
I had Kevin last week, off camera. Kevin was hitting it. Did you see him?
I remember this. Yeah.
He's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
This is amazing. yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point.
Yeah. We
have options, really.
We got one more here that
Yeah.
we can, and then we can end with this one from Carlos. It's a good question. TaylorMade Stealth 6-iron is 24 degrees, and their 5 hybrid rescue is 25 degrees. Does it make sense to carry both based on the loft numbers? He likes the 5 hybrid off the tee and the 6-iron in the fairway and rough.
Yes.
You think it does?
Not knowing the swing, not knowing the numbers in general, we've already talked about how they're not the same club, even though they may be a degree of difference.
And you're going to see big differences.
You're going to talk
in the launch
about
and spin
the hybrid should be longer in length.
Yeah.
Should be, if it is. It probably has graphite. If you have graphite versus steel, the graphite is going to be a different weight capacity, so you might swing it faster. You'll get faster ball speeds. You might get higher launches. And I think you already said this too. Doesn't matter if it says 5 on the bottom.
Right.
If it's the next club that fits.
Or it doesn't even matter what the loft is. I mean, as long
Correct.
as if it gaps correctly and does different things for you, then
That's right.
it doesn't matter. So
That's right.
you could have 2 24-degree clubs in your bag, but if
Right.
they achieve different things,
And
as we said today, you can have 2 22-degree clubs. This is a 7-wood that's 22 degrees. Those other clubs are are both 22 degrees. Completely different things.
So let me go back to this real quick because this is a really interesting thing. Between the iron to the hybrid to the 7-wood, generally speaking, because of the length of it, because of the construction, the technology behind it, we see 3 to 5 mile an hour differences in club speed. Okay? So you went from about 100 to about 103 to about 106.
Yep.
Generally speaking, we see about ball speeds somewhere in that, let's call it, I'd say it's a little bit more around the 5 mile an hour piece, going from about 144 to 151 to 154. That's almost 152, that's 154. There wasn't enough of a separation between the two as we got from 7-wood to 4 hybrid. And so for me, I think the hybrid wins.
Yeah, and I think so
Hands
too.
down.
I think so
We go
too.
from iron to hybrid.
You take away one
Yep.
hideous swing where I hit it out of bounds into
Yep.
somebody's backyard or whatever
Yep.
over there. And those 5 swings, it's also among the straightest of the ovals. And my
Correct.
3 best swings of the day were with the hybrid. So
Yep.
in terms of distance, direction, everything. So, I mean, in this particular test, which I would not have guessed. I'm not a hybrid guy. I'm kind of, I empathize with the people that have said they don't love the look or feel hybrids. There's no confident, or they're not confident with them. But, I mean, I can't argue with what these numbers showed me today. So,
Yeah. The moral of the story ends up being, again, we want people to get fit. We want you to come in and have an experience so that we can go through these things.
yeah.
And I always like to tell people I can always guarantee you 2 things. 1, you're going to get some exercise, and 2, we're going to get some information out of this.
I can vouch for
Right.
the exercise part.
So that's a really important piece of this process. You can do these things on your own, great. You can do them on your own.
Yeah.
We start in here, we get outside, we get to go play. We start seeing what happens on that golf course. If we're playing better, we're hitting better shots, if our score is improving, or whatever it is that we need out of that club or that part of the game for you, we'll be successful.
Yep.
And really, with the opportunity to say, this is another thing. All right, this hybrid just isn't my thing, Tyler, okay? We saw the numbers. I got outside. It still doesn't quite fit me. We have a 30-day return policy.
Exactly. Yep.
So we have the playability that says, listen, we understand outside is the best test of this as well. So you got outside. You played some golf. You didn't see the ball flight you like. You didn't see the distances, the direction. Then we look for something different.
Yeah, we come back in.
We go back to the drawing board. Some of the information we've already got that we have. And,
right. Switch it out for
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that's why we promote fittings. This is a very I know we want to touch on this one today because it's a very important conversation and something you guys broach very commonly in your fittings is this exact what do I do here? And so today we wanted to shed some light on it. We had a fun little test here. Golfers, stay tuned every Tuesday at noon Central. We go live. Next week we've got some more fun coming with you or for you on some Ping at G430 clubs. But Tyler, thank you for spending the time today. A lot of fun. As always, it's a pleasure talking to the Wedge Magician.
I appreciate that.
So,
keep your grooves clean and stay razor sharp.
I love it. Thanks for watching, everybody.
At Second Swing, we know it's not you, it's your clubs. That's why we offer over 100,000 new and used golf clubs and a team of experts who help you find the perfect option for both your swing and your budget. Customize your bag with a tour-level fitting, then trade in your current clubs to save even more on your upgrades. Change your game in store or online at secondswing.com.